Welcome to the Insurance Technology Podcast. I'm your host, Reid Holsworth. Joining me today, this beautiful Waldorf resort in Orlando, Florida, where it's like 50 degrees, not so beautiful, is a guest that I've been wanting to have join, Chase Petrey, president of Applied Pay. Welcome, Chase.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me on. This is exciting.
This is going to be fun. Now, I've known Chase for a while. Chase runs payments business, Applied Pay, that really started up at Applied. It's been super successful. We're going to get into a lot of that as we go on. But first, as always, let's learn a little about you, my man.
Sounds good.
Tell us, where'd you grow up? What was life like as a kid?
Yeah, I grew up in the suburbs of Salt Lake City. So grew up in like the mountains. I was like a mountain kid, spent a ton of time.
Snowboard, ski?
Snowboarding. I'm like peak snowboard age. Like Shaun White was like at its peak. He also has red hair. So it was people would think I was Shaun White on the mountain if I wasn't snowboarding. Like if I was just on the mountain, not moving, then I would get mistaken for Shaun because I have long hair.
I know you well enough to know. I bet you rip on a snowboard. Okay,
there's a difference between.
I know. I know.
there's like the difference between the local legend and like the greatest of all time. So, but yeah, no, grew up like snowboarding, skiing, like fly fishing. So very much like a mountains and outdoors were a big thing of mine. Like I have little kids now. And one thing that I'm like constantly trying to think about is like, how do I get them to just like wander around the wilderness by themselves?
Yeah,
because like that's what I would do. Yep. Like I had a German Shepherd. Yep. We would just like go build a tree house in probably somebody's property.
Yeah,
like they would go there one day and there'd be a tree house. Right? We lived right next to like the Jordan River, which is like the main river that flows in Salt Lake Valley.
Yeah.
So just like building fires at night, like Dennis the Menace, by the river. So I think a lot about that with my girls. Like, how do I kind of provide that? Because it's just not that common right now. Like especially Salt Lake's been so developed now. Like, it's blown up. It's like a real city now. Mm-hmm. So it's tough to find that. But yes, try to spend a ton of that energy now with my girls, just like getting them up in the mountains and taking advantage of Utah.
Yeah, it's funny with my kids. The thing that I've done is I'll like my sons, the boys, I'll be like, they're sitting around doing nothing and be like, why don't you guys go in the back and play in the river and do something? They're like, yeah, whatever, and I'm like, how about this? I'll pay you $1 per crawfish you bring me, like $2 if you bring me a fish, cool. Like whatever, $10 if you bring me a turtle, and they're like, what? And they're doing all day. Yeah, like when their buddies are over, so you got to incentivize them. I don't know, maybe that's wrong. I don't know. But it works.
You got to put some incentives in place. Yeah, my girls are too young to care about that stuff. So they're still like, I have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old, so it's very much just like they're stoked to be with dad. Mm-hmm. It's actually really cute and also kind of funny. My daughter's a Girl Scout, and so she went to Girl Scouts, and one of the activities like this last Girl Scouts was like New Year's resolutions, and like they're 8 years old. It's not like serious stuff. But her one New Year's resolution was to spend more time with mom and dad, which I think one is very sweet and cute, but also like she only spends time with mom and dad. So like we're trying to figure out like how to spend less time, like to like go out and like, invest in our relationship. And like our daughter's like, nah, dude, I'm tripling down on mom and dad time. But it's awesome. Like it's great.
So Salt Lake City, outside, any sports particularly, snowboard, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Totally get that. You play any actual sports?
Yeah.
I know, trust me. I didn't play actual sports either. Not that,
Yeah, I grew up like very much like quintessential American suburbs, like played baseball in the backyard, I played football, believe it or not. That was like the big thing. I was like a serious football player.
Oh, no kidding.
This is actually a real story. Like I was really into football. I like hit puberty young, so like that helped, because I was just like big. I was like the tallest kid in the school for like 2 years.
Oh wow!
When I was in like 5th and 6th grade though, so like not a big deal. But like I was all in on football. Like for real, was like I'm gonna be like a, I had no real prospects, but other than like I could pay for like a junior college or something.
Yeah.
But then everyone outgrew me. One, like I'm 5'10", like not gonna play even like junior college, But I got like super interested in politics when I was in high school, And I ended up having the really cool opportunity to be a Senate page in Washington, D.C. when I was in high school. Yeah.
Damn.
So like I kind of flipped from like sports, like I was actually a really bad student in middle school and elementary school. Like I got terrible grades. And then when ninth grade came around, like high school, it's funny that my brother who's the oldest, so he's 12 years older than me, he had just gotten into Harvard.
Wow.
And like my family is not like fancy. Like both my parents worked. I'm the youngest of 4 kids. Like it was not like my dad didn't graduate college. Like my brother going to Harvard was just like totally random. I had no idea how big of a deal that even was at the time. But I remember my brother telling me like, hey, when you start high school, like you got to care about school. Like, because that's just like, that opens doors. Like if you don't like school, it doesn't matter. But like when you go to high school. So I started like applying myself in ninth grade. And I kind of became like an academic nerd type of thing in high school. Like I was like in student government in high school. I went my junior year as a Senate page. So like packed up my bags, moved to Washington, D.C. as a 16-year-old.
That's wild.
And like lived in like a old mortuary, actually.
Like
the Senate page housing is an old mortuary that they've turned into like a dorm for the Senate pages. There's 30 kids.
Wow.
And so you live there, you go to school, you wake up at 5 a.m. Sorry, you start school at 5 a.m. as a Senate page. You go to school from 5 to 8:30 a.m. And then you go work like a full work day, like in the Capitol building. But they pay you actually. No,
really?
They actually pay you.
Oh, no kidding.
And it was like the most money I ever had until I was like 25.
Wow.
Because they cover all your expenses.
Oh, yeah.
Because you live in a dorm and that's all covered.
Yeah.
And like you're making money as like
totally.
when you're like 16.
Wow.
And like it was actually amazing because I like left with like $2,000 or something. And that was like crazy money to me. Like that was seriously probably the most money I had in my bank account until I was like 25. So it was pretty sweet in that regard. But yeah, did that. And then came back and like was just super into like, I don't know if you know what like Boys State is. Boys State's like this like.
What's that?
It's this like government summer. It's like for like super nerdy politics kids. Like you have to get selected. And then you go and you represent like your town across the state. And like you run like this mock government for a week and you like live.
Oh, whoa.
It's like summer camp for like politics.
Wow.
So I was really like, Mr.
So you're like, I want to be the governor of Utah.
I was like politics boy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I was like,
what was your dream job? Like going through that? Like,
well, it's funny. I thought government, like I was like, oh, like I'll work in, the government, run for office, maybe that type of thing. But then when I worked for the government, I was just like, absolutely not. I will never do this. Like, which is what that stuff's for. Like you go, see how it's run.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh yeah, this is not for me. Like no chance. Like I would get in trouble there. I actually got almost kicked out. This is like a true story. Like I was very much like a troublemaker. Like I was getting kicked out of everything. Like truly, and like still kind of.
I actually don't really see that about
really?
you. Yeah, I mean, I can see it now, but I actually don't see that.
Yeah, no, like it's just super militant, and like I'm just not a fan of like authority. Like I don't know why, but like my teachers were always like, great kid, got a bright future, but he's the biggest explicative, like he's just hard. Like he does not respect authority. He doesn't obey anything. And so when I was a Senate page, dude, it was psycho. There was the principal of like the program. She would straight up every morning at 5 a.m. This is a true story. There were 30 of us, and we went to school in the basement of the dorm. And it was where the creamery, what's it called? Not the creamery, the cremation. It was like there was like straight up like still like an oven, remnants of like an oven where they burn people. And we would go downstairs, and the principal, there was like a doorway, and she would feel all the boys' faces to make sure we had shaved that morning.
Whoa! And
she would feel all the girls' hair to make sure they had blow dried their hair fully before coming into school. We had to wear like uniforms, like it was insane. And I was like 16, like I didn't shave every day, like no chance. And she would like feel like my peach fuzz and be like, back upstairs. And I would have to go upstairs and then shave. And then I'd come back down. But like, it was a whole thing. And then I got on, I would say dude too much.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was saying dude a lot. And like, I feel like you have similar language to me. Like,
Yeah.
dude isn't, you're not calling someone a dude when you say the word dude.
Right, totally.
You're just
100%.
It's just like a filler word.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
They had such a hard time with that, to the point that they had to sit me down. So I was saying dude all the time, and they sniffed out my like anti-authoritarianism like quick. And they were like, I was probably, I don't know, halfway through. It's like a 6-month program. I was like 3 months in. You know, I'm like the 16-year-old away from home, living in a big city. Like, it's like extreme, you know? And they sit me down. So first of all, she's like, Chase, tomorrow we're going to have like I don't know what they called it, an intervention, you know, after school. Like,
dude.
No. She's like, I've already called the Senate to tell them you won't be attending, like, you won't be on time. Like, we'll drive you there after. I was just like, okay, you know? And so I go and I sit down, and it's the professors, they were actually professors, but they taught at the Page School in the morning, and then they taught at universities. But I had like the 4 professors and the principal, and it was a complete dress down for like 30 minutes.
Wow.
It was like, you're like, I don't think I'm exaggerating. I haven't told this story much, actually. I don't know why we went down this path, but like, it was like, they were like these like 55-year-old people, you know, like authorities being like, you're nothing. You're at the bottom of the totem pole. Like,
oh my God.
Yeah, like you're so disrespectful. Like, you have no place. Like, you're not like, don't speak unless spoken to.
Yeah.
Like, we're not a dude. We're not your peer. Like, it was bad. And I was in tears.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah. And
That's
they were like, if you step out of line again, like, you're going home. And I was like mortified. And
so was that the last time you said dude until now?
I doubt it. It's like ingrained. I still say it. You know, like I said it earlier in the keynote. Like, I can't not say it. It's just like a filler word. But it was scary. So anyway, that gives you a sense of like, I did a lot of things that required obedience, but I wasn't obedient.
Yeah.
Which actually, like, I feel like is similar to kind of how I live my life now. It's like, I like to be a part of the system, I guess. Like, I enjoy kind of playing the game, but like, I've always seen myself as kind of like an anti-establishment, like, man.
Yeah,
you know?
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah, I know. I agree. I feel like you're in a similar boat. So yeah.
That's awesome. So after that, what happened?
College? Well, so I grew up Mormon,
Yeah.
like, which is a big part of my life, actually. Like, so I'm not LDS anymore, but I went to university. I went to BYU, which is like the big like school. I loved my experience there, but went on an LDS mission. So I've like, Page School was intense, like ratchet that up like to a 10. And like, that's what an LDS mission is like.
Yeah, tell me about that. Like, what's that like?
So you go, it's changed now, which is really recent and different. Like, for 60 years, it was kind of the same type of thing. And what it was is you would go for 2 years, and you get kind of sent, you just get assigned where you go. So I randomly got assigned to South Carolina in the United States, but my assignment was like the Hispanic immigrant population. So they send you to like language program.
So you learned Spanish?
Yeah,
so
I learned Spanish. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not great anymore, but like, I was fluent. You know, they send you to a program and like, you just speak Spanish all day. Like, you're just like knocking doors in like immigrant neighborhoods all day. So, but the schedule's intense when you're on an LDS mission. Like, you go, and first of all, there's no communication with like the outside world. Like, you can't call your family, you can't call your friends. There's no internet, there's no phone.
Like ever?
Ever. You
Really?
can call your mom on Mother's Day, and you can call your family on Christmas.
What?
And you're only supposed to talk for an hour.
No
Yeah,
way.
Yeah. You can write
Wow.
letters, like physical letters. You can write letters.
Can you receive letters?
You can
I see.
receive.
Okay.
Sorry,
Yeah.
you can receive and write letters.
Yeah.
At the time, you couldn't even email. So it was like writing physical letters, and like, yeah, you could call home twice a year effectively. And there's no media, like no TV, no radio, no music, like nothing. Like, it's proper like monk level.
Wow.
And so the routine is, you wake up at 6:30 a.m. You have like Bible study effectively for a couple hours in the morning, and then you just go like pound the pavement for like 12 hours. And you don't get it, like, you do that every single day of the week. And when I say pound the pavement, it's like you're knocking doors, pitching.
So is there like a KPI? Like, what are the like? Oh yeah. Like, so what does that look like?
No,
like,
well, it's all, so there's what's called a mission president, and it's the person who runs like that geography.
okay. Yep.
And that's an adult. So there's like somebody, and that's a pretty high position, and they typically get people who are like had been successful in the private sector to like do that.
Oh,
and
wow.
so my mission was run by like a really intense sales leader. Like he had founded several like sales organizations.
Wow.
And so it was run like I had.
So there's like pros at canvassing and all that, knocking on doors,
100%,
getting in.
like straight up, like
yeah.
I would report my numbers every day, all the way up the chain.
Wow.
And if you missed, like you'd get a call.
Whoa.
Like it was like proper. You'd have like QBRs every single quarter on like the funnel. Like there's all the funnel metrics. Like
that's wild.
Yeah. Like I was in like a hardcore door-to-door sales org for 2 years, but selling something very difficult.
That's wild.
Like and not every we call them missions. Not every mission's like that. Like kind of the leader like dictates the flavor a little bit. But like mine, because I had this leader who was like who had been like a sales leader.
So you guys couldn't call home, had no meeting, no nothing, but you probably had Salesforce.
Dude, we had binders.
Logging your opportunities.
No, we had binders with all of the like effectively like an opportunity, dude. And it was like I was laughing with some friends the other day. I was like thinking about it. I was like, I was in South Carolina, like, you're asked to speak Spanish all day, even if you're assigned to another. There's two. You go out in twos, right?
Yeah,
and
right.
That's called your companion.
Okay.
So you're assigned to this companion, and
do you still talk to your companion?
Some of them. Well, you get rotated around.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And actually, some of them are like still like best friends.
Oh, yeah, totally.
You get like you get rotated around kind of like several times throughout the period. And so I was laughing. I was telling some friends about this who didn't have background in this. I was like, yeah, like we used to speak Spanish all day, just two white guys, like in one-on-one conversations. Which was just like asked. It was just like what you were supposed to do. And like, it's all about obedience. So I was just like, all right. So there'd just be like these two white guys from Utah walking around South Carolina in a suit in 100-degree weather, on a bicycle.
Oh my gosh.
Just speaking Spanish to each other. Like, this is the most hilarious thing. And then you go back to our apartment. We lived in like apartments, and we would live in like Hispanic neighborhoods. So it was like we'd go back and like we'd live in a trailer for a while. And like go back to the trailer, it'd be like total bare bones. There'd be like two twin beds and a couch.
Oh wow.
Not a single thing else. And that was on purpose. Like it was supposed to be just like fully minimal. And then just a huge map of the town we lived in.
It's like your territory.
Yes. 100%. And it was the map was atlases that we had went to the city library and scanned on Xerox machines and then like stitched together like a huge map and had pins with like string going everywhere. And the pins were like different like funnel stages.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It was like for real. So
that's pretty wild.
You're getting like the real inside scoop on what it's like. But again, like this was the flavor of mine.
Yeah.
Like not everybody has this, but like for me, it was like that. So did that. And it was awesome, actually. Like, I'm not LDS anymore, but it's such a hard thing.
Yeah.
Like being removed from your friends, your family, all of media.
Oh my gosh.
And you're just expected to be like 100% diligent in this thing. Requires just a level of discipline that like I wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah.
Like
true.
you just learn.
Yeah.
Like grit. You're knocking doors in like sketchy neighborhoods from 10 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. every day. And like
like 7 days a week. No.
So 6 days a week.
Okay.
The only day that you had off is you get Mondays off. It's called P Day, preparation day. And you're only allowed to do like your laundry and your grocery shopping. And then once you're done with that, you're expected to go back out. So like there's no actual break. Like that's it. So like, and if you were diligent, like not everyone's super hardcore, but like I decided I was going to be. And so I was like super, and that's partially why they give you like a companion is so like you can keep, like there's accountability.
Yeah, totally.
Yep. So yeah, that's what it was like. And I'm super grateful for that experience. Like I think that I learned how to just like, I really like to have fun and like enjoy life, but when it's time to like buckle down and just like white knuckle it, like I don't think I'd be able to do that if I didn't have that experience.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah.
So you did that for 2 years.
Yeah, yeah. And then I went to university, studied political science.
Okay.
I was a politics boy.
Yep.
Yeah. No, but I actually did political economics, and I learned stats, and that was kind of like an unlock for me because I didn't think I was good at math. Like I went through school like not being good at math. I was like good at like writing and stuff.
Well, it's probably because you didn't really care when you were young.
Yeah, yeah. And I just didn't think I was good at it. Like calculus was super abstract.
Yeah.
Like, but I came back and got into what's called econometrics, which is like it's like applied statistics effectively, and loved it. And like I was good at it. And you learn to code because like math now was like in code, you know?
Yeah.
And so like I learned to code a little bit. I developed an app when I was in college with a buddy. And it was like at the time, so the library in college is huge, you know, and like it's kind of like the center of social activity as well.
Yep.
But there was no cell service in the library because it was like the BYU library like goes down. And so you could never like find your friends. And so I effectively built like a way to like, we like sketched out the blueprints of the library. And like when you were in the library, you could like drop yourself on the map. And it was super popular. Like we got like to 12,000 users in like 48 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. And
no kidding.
We had like 5,000 daily active users for like a few months. Like it was like
wow.
a ton of fun, and like it was cool. And it was like we were using like cutting edge technology, like beacon stuff, like which are is kind of not a thing anymore. But there was a while where like you could like geolocate with like these beacons, and it was cool. So we were doing that, and then I was really scared of entrepreneurship because my dad was like an entrepreneur. My dad's a chef, actually.
Oh wow, no kidding.
So like, you know, it's like boom and bust restaurants, things like that. And so I was like, I just want like a corporate job. I want health insurance. Like I never had health insurance as a kid. Yeah. And that was just like a thing in my life, you know, or it was like, can't go to the doctor. Like, oh, like you're feeling sick. Let's take you to the chiropractor.
Oh, I hear you, dude. Yeah,
like,
trust me. Yeah.
So that was like a big thing for me. Is like I wanted like a corporate job. I didn't feel ready to like be an entrepreneur. But I was also coming out of school like when tech was super cool. Like, you know, my brother's 12 years older than me. Like when he was coming out of school, it was like lawyers. Like everyone was like going to law school or like going to like some fancy MBA or something. That was kind of like the prestigious track. For me, it was like tech was kind of like the sexy thing. And I did an internship with a management consulting firm, because that was also kind of like the thing is like go do management consulting and then like be a founder. That was like the kind of a path that people were recommending. And I got in, and this goes to this like anti-authoritarian thing. It's like got in this management consulting firm, and it's like super hierarchical, you know?
So that was like
that was an internship during college.
Okay.
So I got into that, and it was like super hierarchical, and like, yeah, and like I hated that environment. And then tech seemed like very like progressive and like, yeah, like flat orgs, you know, it's like flat orgs were like super popular at the time.
Totally.
Like, you know, people would brag about being like, there's a CEO and everybody else, you know, like flat orgs was super popular in tech. And so I was like really drawn to that. And so, decided down the tech path. But I went to school, learned how to code, kind of developed that background, and then went in to tech, which we can talk about in a minute. But
So then what was your first actual job?
So I worked through school, like in real jobs. So I my freshman year, I was actually like I was like a graphic designer in college, in high school. Like I was like super into it. I was like learned Creative Suite, and like back then Creative Suite was pretty technical. Like you had to have like technical chops, and so freshman year, I was like, oh, I'm going to be a graphic designer. And I got a job as a graphic designer, like for like a marketing agency in my freshman year. So I did that. And then it's so funny. I have to think about this now, because now I'm in this seat when people ask like for advice, you know?
Yeah.
So the only like corporate guy in my life was my grandpa, my mom's dad. He was like a career United Airlines guy.
Okay.
He wasn't like a top exec or anything, but like he was that generation, like you worked for the company, and like you retired for that company, you had a pension, and like he was like the only guy in my life who was like had a career, you know, like everyone else was just kind of like
jobs,
you know. And he was like, graphic designer, huh? Not a lot of money in that. It's just like 80-year-old, like work, like he had no clue, you know. And so I like was like, yeah. And so I just like decided like, I probably shouldn't be a graphic designer. So when I came back from my mission, I was like, I actually did get some really good advice from a guy that I really respect, who I'm still in contact with, who's a founder of a fintech business actually. And he was like, listen, man, you got to learn like a skill. Like, don't just like get like a business, like super generic stuff. Like you need like a sharp skill. Like he called it a trade. He's like, you don't have to be a plumber, but like learn a skill. So for me, that was like what's now called data science, but like predictive analytics. Okay. So I like went super
deep. That was your trade.
That was my trade.
Some people were like painters, masons.
I was like, very few people were like went deep in like predictive analytics. Yeah. And so I got I went for this consulting firm, and I was actually a quant. I was like a analyst.
No kidding.
Yeah. So I was like doing like all their predictive analytics and all that stuff. And then I was in a course at BYU that was super cool. It was just called like entrepreneurship, and they got like tech founders. Well, they didn't have to be tech founders, but Utah is like a tech hub, and so it's mostly tech founders coming in and like giving like a 40-minute kind of like spiel on how they got to where they were, and then a Q&A. And I really liked this one guy, and he was like, this is actually good advice. He was like, listen, if you want to talk to somebody, ask them out to lunch, because everybody's got to eat. Yeah. So like if you want to get a meeting with someone, like ask them to go to lunch, because everyone's got to meet. And so I did that to him.
Oh, nice.
Right. So I was
love that. Yeah.
So I was like, hey, man, I'm taking your advice. Yeah. Like, I'm just some college student, but like, would love to go to lunch. And he was like, I'm definitely not going to go to lunch with you, but, like, talk to like, what do you want? Are you looking for a job? Like, I was like, yeah, like this is my background. Like, I would love to, like chat about a job. And he's like, talk to this guy, which was like the VP of like engineering or something, So like he hooked me up. And so I went and worked, there and
for that dude's company.
I went and worked for that dude's company. Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. So it was called Allegiance. It was like customer analytics stuff.
Okay.
So it was like consumer research, but it was like their like slogan at the time was like death to market research. It was like the productization of market research.
Yeah.
So I was like doing technical implementations. So I was like getting customer data and like structuring it and like getting it ready. A lot of survey type stuff. So I was doing that on the technical side. I worked on like some machine learning product stuff there as well. And I was just buddies with the founder. Like, I really liked him. We had good chemistry. And it wasn't a tiny company. It was like 100 people. So it was like, I had like 10 million in ARR type thing. Yeah. But he was cool. And like, I was like, dude, I just want to be you, And like, that's something I've learned is like, just say that to somebody. No one wants, like, that's like the nicest thing you could say to someone.
Totally.
And like, if you say that to someone, like, of course they're going to be like, sweet, let me help you out.
Right? Totally.
Like, yeah. And he was like, all right. So he was super cool and was like, hey, I got this board deck, like we need someone with like good Excel skills. So I would like get seconded for like 2 months to just like build a financial model, even though like I didn't work in finance, And then he'd be like, hey, we need someone who like knows a lot about product to like talk to this customer. And this is like, and so that kind of then evolved eventually like sales engineering,
Okay, yeah.
So that's how I kind of got into sales. It was like, I was like the product guy who like could present in front of customers. And so I kind of got into that. But I was kind of like, that's the beauty of startups. And anyone who's thinking about this is like, startups are sweet because you can do anything. It's like, you can just be like, hey, that's a problem. Like, I'd love to like sink my teeth into
yes,
that.
Please do it.
Yeah,
yes, 100%.
Totally. And like, I that's what I did is I worked for this startup, and then the big break I had was I spoke Spanish from my mission, and we landed Aeromexico, which was this huge logo for this startup at the time. Aeromexico is like the big airline in Mexico, and they needed somebody who knew the product and spoke Spanish. And I was way too junior to handle this job, but I was like the account lead effectively for Aeromexico way earlier than I should have been because I spoke Spanish, knew the product. So I'd go spend like a month in Mexico City for like a few quarters. Like I would just go base myself out of Mexico, and they loved it because I spoke Spanish and knew the product, even though like I didn't have the polish. I'm sure they were wanting like someone like who wasn't like a kid.
Yeah, the client was like, "What is this?"
Yeah,
kid
like who's this
doing?"
12-year-old?
I know, right?
Like I was like young. I was like
Yeah,
22.
I could imagine you look young as is, dude.
Yeah.
You look like just a child.
Yeah, and I'm like speaking like slang Mexican Spanish because that's what they like.
North Carolina, Mexico.
Well, like the immigrants aren't like,
Yeah.
they're
Totally
the
all
people that are
proper.
looking for opportunity, you
Yeah.
know? So it's like the Spanish I learn is like street
Yeah.
Spanish,
Right.
And so they're just like, what is this guy? Dude, like, who is this kid, So, yeah, so that was like a good launch pad for me. It was like, I got the, it's like, I wore tons of hats and I was eager, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
and I was direct with my eagerness. I was like, dude, I just want to like crush it. Like, I'll do whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just tell me. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Like, my dad was a chef. Like, I don't know anything about corporate life. Just like tell me how to make it, and like I'll just do it. So
Yeah.
that was how I got started in tech.
So then Aero Mexico. Then what? What happened?
Yeah. So then I kind of became the international guy.
Okay. Here we go.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, well, Chase is like super into like other cultures. Like he can make it work, like. And so what happened was we were at our customer event, and one of the BD guys, like we have EAC, it was like that type of thing.
Yeah.
It was like a customer, exec offsite type thing. And I was there, and one of the BD guys was like, hey, I was just kind of overhearing. He was like, hey, I just closed this channel partner in Australia. And they're a big business. They were like a big publicly traded marketing firm that was gonna like white label our software into like Asia Pacific. And he was like, yeah. And this guy was like, had a family, kids and stuff. And he was just like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm excited, but I don't know. Like, it's gonna be tough making it work, like someone's got to go there and like get it started. And I was like, excuse me. What? And I was like, hey, I would totally do that.
Yeah.
Like, I will get on a plane tomorrow to go to Australia.
Yeah.
And like, it happened fast. It was like, all right, they introduced me to the channel partner. The channel partner didn't vet me at all. They didn't know I was like 12 years old. Like I was just recommended by the BD guy. They're like, hey, there's this guy. He knows the product. And the channel partner's like, okay, like show up sight unseen. Like they worked out my visa, worked out my comp plan, because I was getting paid. I was working for the channel partner because the startup couldn't like sponsor. Like startup was a startup. Like they didn't know how to like get visas going. But this was like a big company.
Yeah. Okay.
And so they were like, oh, like we'll sponsor him to come over and I show up and it's like a P&L manager role. Like they had an existing business, and what the job was like convert all their homegrown tech onto this new platform.
Okay. Wow. Yeah.
So it was like migration. It was like deep in like migration work. There was like an existing team. Wow. And I was like the P&L owner of like this, they called it the voice of customer business.
Holy moly.
And I was like 25, 26.
Wow.
And so I got on that business, and then my startup that I was working for got acquired by a big business in the US. And I saw that as an opportunity, and I was like, that's a big business. They don't have the big business that acquired us had a footprint in Europe, but they didn't have a footprint in Asia. And I was like, I bet that they would buy the business. I bet they'd buy this business unit that I'm running from this agency and like go direct, like a pathway to direct in region. And that's what we did. So I like brokered this deal to be like, because we had gotten a ton of momentum. Like we'd shown product market fit in the region. And so when that deal closed back in the US, I called up the exec team and I was like, hey, there's this Australian business, we're a channel partner, you're only making 60% of the deal. I think that you could actually buy this business for like very little money because it's not super strategic to the broader, like I was able to kind of read the tea leaves, and so we bought the business, and then I started the Australia office for this company, for this US company.
So you lived in Australia then?
So I lived in Australia for 4 years.
Wow.
And it broadened out to like wider Asia Pacific. So I was working in Singapore. I remember the first, like, again, it's incredible, like the luck that you get sometimes, like we were like, oh, we should think about Singapore. We didn't know shit about Singapore, And so like me and the like managing director there, who's like an Australian guy, I love him, David Blake, who's like a huge mentor of mine. We like buy these tickets to like this, like this market research event in Singapore. We like show up, don't sponsor anything. Like we just like show up and meet these two ladies, like kind of just like in a casual setting. They ended up being like these execs at UOB, like one of the biggest banks in Singapore.
Oh, wow.
And they bought us, like they bought the software as like our foundational client.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That's
And
badass.
then it was like, I was like the guy that's like, all right, I got to figure out how to implement this, in Singapore. Like, and it'd be like 2 Australians showing up in New York City and landing Bank of America. Like that would be the equivalent. Like it was
insane.
Crazy.
That's insane.
And then you got UOB, then you get everybody else.
No, of course. Yeah.
So
yeah.
And then I got a really good opportunity to go run Europe for this business, and that was a big business.
Okay.
So like because they were established in Europe, and so I went and ran Europe, and that was a big business. 300 people in the team. I had just turned 30.
Wow.
And I was really eager to not have the business know that I was 30,
Mm-hmm.
And
But you look like you're like 18.
Well,
probably.
I had a kid. I had my first daughter at the time.
Okay.
And in Europe, people don't have kids till much later.
Oh,
So I
okay.
kind of had that going for me.
All right. Okay.
But then I had gotten this 30 under 30 thing.
Oh, no.
And I just figured like, whatever, no one's going to see it. But then, of course, like the marketing team picks it up and like blasts it out.
Oh, no.
Like I was like 2 weeks in, and it was actually like, I feel kind of cringy, and maybe we'll cut this because I feel kind of cringy about it because like I'm not trying to like brag about this, but it was actually like horrific for me because all of my direct reports were in their 50s. They had worked for the business for like 20 years, like, and this like 12-year-old shows up, American at that, it's like, and then I was like super eager to let everyone believe I was like 40, and then like 2 weeks in, it was just like cat's out of the bag, like, and I was like, oh no, this is tough, dude. Like this is for real tough, and it was hard. Like it was 5 direct reports, 4 of which they were all in their 50s, 4 of which were women. And I was like this teenager American. They were British and German. Like we had 2 offices.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, that's tough.
Yeah.
Like showing up as like the boss when you have a bunch of people who wanted that job, expected that job, probably more deserving of that job.
Yeah.
Showing up with this foreigner who's like it was hard, dude. Trying to win that team over was hard. Yeah. And like I won some over and some not.
Yeah.
And like that was the first time that I had to just live with the fact that like this person's gonna hate me.
Yeah.
And like I just gotta be okay.
You gotta deal with it.
Yeah. Like it's okay if you don't like me. And like you have to have that conversation. Like it's okay. Like you don't like me. I respect you, by the way. But like I totally get that you have like you don't like me. We've got to make this work.
Yep.
Like I need you in this role. Like let's just put it on the table. You don't like me. That's okay. I'm okay with that. But like you gotta work with me.
Yeah. Right.
And like those are tough conversations to have when you're 30.
Wow. That's wild.
Yeah.
It's a crazy story.
So I feel like I've been talking. Hopefully,
this is
splice it all together so it looks like Reid's actually talking instead of me just like railroading.
No, it's what it's for, dude. It's all about you. It's not about me.
I feel dumb now. I feel really embarrassed. It's like, all right, it's 4:00. We got to get out of here.
It's all good. So then what? So then what happened?
I had a second on the way.
Yep.
And it was funny. This is like kind of more personal, but it was like the question that was keeping me and my wife up was like, when you go into labor, who's going to take Louisa? My oldest.
Yeah.
She was like 2.
Yeah.
It's like who's going to like be with Louisa? Like, is Louisa just going to be in the delivery room with us?
Yeah.
Like, it's a very practical thing, but it was like, I don't know, like it just felt a bit overwhelming to have a second kid, like living in a foreign country, like on our own. And so, that founder that I became buddies with, who I worked with straight out of school, he he was the president of like a killer rocket ship company called Podium.
Oh yeah.
And we had stayed in contact, and I was like, hey, like, I was like, hey, I'm looking to move back to have our second kid. And so I took a role with Podium.
So what does Podium do for the audience?
Yeah, Podium is like a SMB, like small business communications platform. Actually, some of the audience, if their agencies, might use Podium. It's it's just like a texting platform between like customers and businesses. It's a great product. Like I think it's a fantastic business. So I went there to actually run international business because they had just launched Australia. They wanted to launch Europe, so I was like the international guy.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. But then it didn't make any sense. I joined, it made no sense. There was so much more like white space in the US, like internationalization of software, super complex.
Yeah.
Also, like messaging is like totally local. Like some regions use WhatsApp, some use MSN, some use Facebook Messenger. Like Australia's like primary messaging app at the time was like Facebook Messenger. Like people didn't text. It was like Facebook Messenger, and like Europe was all on WhatsApp. So we got in there and it was like, this isn't gonna work. And this is actually how I ended up in fintech. Is they were like, well, we think there's a payments opportunity. We need like a GM for the payments business. Like, you want to like see if you can get that going? And so that was what I ended up doing. And so I was like, all right, it was like me and a product manager and a few engineers, and like we built the payments business, which ended up being like a huge success and a huge part of that business. So that was also like, I think, a testament to just being like open to doing whatever, like whatever the need of the hour is. Like, if you're the guy willing to do that, like, just be open to it, instead of like feeling like you're super rigid and whatever. Which was actually scary to me, because I thought like, I'm going to be the international guy for the rest of my career.
Right.
Like, that's my job. I'd done it for 10 years. Like, I've been very successful at it. So it's like, international is my lane. And then now I'm like the fintech guy, but like probably at some point I'm not going to be. It's like, I'm going to be the AI guy or like whatever.
Right,
you know what I mean? It's like,
totally.
I think being flexible is good, but there's probably merit to like sticking with one thing.
Yeah, totally.
Like, there's probably some other person who's going to sit in the seat and give the opposite advice, which is probably better advice.
So did you have an exit at Podium?
So we haven't sold yet. Yeah, it's still it's Series D now.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so Series D, still a major shareholder there. So go out and buy Podium. It's a great business. The founder's awesome. Like, I like that business. But then but actually got back into international. Okay. So international fintech reached out, and they were like, hey, we need somebody to be the GM of North America. Actually, it was an Asian business. It was a SoftBank portfolio company called Paytm in India and PayPay in Japan. And they were like, hey, we need like a GM who knows who can like navigate international business, but like be the GM in North America. So it was kind of like the inverse. Yeah. Where I was like going to be the American guy for the international business instead of the reverse. Yep. And SoftBank at the time was like such a big deal, dude. Like, Vision Fund, like, if you were in the startup space, like SoftBank was like going to Harvard. Yeah, like it was a big deal. Yep. So I couldn't say no. So joined that business, and then fintech just collapsed when I was there. Like, we went public at an $18 billion valuation. Wow. Dropped to 4. Holy shit. In like 4 months. Wow. And fintech collapsed, and the opportunity for me was like, we had to pivot, obviously, figure out what we were going to do, and I had an opportunity to go run a part of this business in Japan, like be like the CEO of this Japanese business. And I was in Japan, and Graham and I had already established a connection previously, and he texted me and he was like, "You up? Like, you up? Like." Not Graham really. Blackwell, president of Applied. Sorry, yeah. So this is Graham Blackwell. He's the president. But no, he like texted me and he was like, "Hey, been thinking about you." That's always something he'd say too. 100%. No. Honestly, it felt like it felt like the best thing that could have ever happened to me. Actually, like I actually feel kind of emotional thinking about it, because I felt a ton of pressure in that moment of like, what are we gonna do? Yeah. And then this opportunity was something I really wanted to do previously, but like just had other opportunities that I needed to pursue. So when this came back as an option, I was like, it was seriously like, say no more, like, like, tell me when and where, like, I will be there. So tell the audience, what is the opportunity?
What was it? Like what what did Graham want to,
yeah,
you know?
he wanted a GM to come build a fintech business, which is what I had done a couple times already. So it was like an opportunity I knew super well.
Mm-hmm.
We had met
Mm-hmm.
already,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
I'd met the executive team, and I thought it was an awesome place. Like I was like, one day I want to work for that company.
Mm-hmm.
Like I told myself that, I told my wife that. I was like, listen, now's not the time. I have this kind of like, this moonshot opportunity. And I was like, one day I want to work for that company. And it was always on the back burner. And then Graham reached out and the opportunity was still on the table. And I was like, absolutely yes, like super grateful. Like I felt again, like emotional about the opportunity to come do this. And like, it's panned out exactly as I would have hoped. Like actually better. Like when I tell people, like Applied is such a good business. Like the fundamentals of the business are amazing. Like I probably will never work for a better business on fundamentals.
Mm-hmm.
The culture is great. Like people take leadership seriously. It's not an afterthought. And the executive team is like people I all admire. You know, like if I can look up to who I'm being led by, that's like 90% of me. Is like if I don't respect who's like, who I'm supposed to respect, referencing my anti-authoritarian background,
totally.
It's like it's not going to work.
Right.
But like if I have genuine admiration for like who I'm supposed to be following, like like I'm locked in, like it's a railroad track. So
yeah. Talk about the business. So I'm not gonna lie, dude. When Graham came out, he's like, "We're gonna do this thing. We're gonna payments." It makes so they had like huge. They put like huge numbers on paper of like what. And I'm like, "There's no way." Like I was like, I'm not gonna lie. I was like, "Nah." Like I get it, but like not like that. But dude, it's like, I mean, it's freaking real what you guys have done in a short amount of time. And then too, like, so talk about like, you kind of started in the payment side and now what you're kind of getting into now. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
What you guys are doing. I mean, it's like you're starting something that doesn't exist in our industry.
Yeah.
You've embarked on a journey to solve problems that nobody's else have been able to solve ever.
When I think about like what kind of like investors or like, analysts call like what's called embedded fintech or embedded payments, it's a really interesting trend that's been going on for like, let's call it 7 years now. What it is, it's like previously you had like your core operating system from a software perspective. And like that would have been like, PeopleSoft or like some point of sale system for a retailer, right?
Yep.
And it was completely disconnected. It was like locally deployed on servers, like wasn't cloud connected. And then you had your financial relationship with your bank, like you had your merchant services guy who gave you your payments processing. You had your treasury guy who did, your bank account, all this stuff. And what happened is cloud computing became the standard, which made it a lot more connected opportunity, right? Cloud computing meaning like it was able to, you could have like security without it being like locally managed, which is like actually the fundamental thing that's going on here. Is like I can get bank level security without being a bank, right? And encryption, and like all of these things.
So especially in that business, totally.
And so what happened was you could get bank level security by effectively like have cloud computing enable like bank level security for non-bank entities, right?
Yep.
And so that happens, and then like digital payments explode at the same time. And then it became just like this obvious thing where it's like, well, I could build a payment acceptance inside of my core operating software, which then creates like makes invoicing way easier. It makes accounts receivable from an accounting perspective way easier. And then on the flip side, on the payment out, right? Like issuance is way easier, controls around that, who's spending what, approval at like a, software is what does the approval at like, hey, you can buy a cup of coffee, but like you can't use this card to like go to the strip club.
Right.
It's like there's software that will look at what's called the MCC, merchant code, and say like in an instant when you swipe, it's like this is a coffee shop. And like the company can approve it. Or like this is like super dodgy, so like we're going to decline this transaction on the issuing side. And so like all of this technology started kind of compounding where it made it just very natural for software companies to start looking a lot like banks actually. Where it's like, well, actually, why doesn't my core platform offer the payment because it's way better if they offer it because it's super connected.
Yeah, it's embedded
in everything.
Yeah, totally.
And that becomes the same for like bank accounts. It's like, well, if my accounting software was also my bank account, it would know all of my transactions and could automatically categorize those transactions.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
And if my software was my bank that issued my credit card, same thing. That's like, you've heard of these companies probably like Brex, Ramp, Divvy.
Mm-hmm.
That's like what they do. It's like you swipe the card and it gets automatically categorized.
Yep.
You don't need to go and categorize your expenses. Like it
Yep.
categorizes automatically. And so software like encryption, security, and then banks started investing in it as well, where you started getting these like what are called industrial banks or like industrial banks, or like sometimes they're called fintech banks, but they're not like, it's not like the branch down the street. It's like a bank you've never heard of. And what they do is like, they're the balance sheet. They handle all the compliance with like the FDIC. They handle all the stuff, the capital requirements, like all of the stuff. But they build APIs for tech companies.
Yep.
So they're like kind of like, it's called BaaS, banking as a service, or bank as a service.
Okay.
And so you get these like pockets in this ecosystem that make it so that this embedded fintech experience works from a compliance standpoint, it works from a technology standpoint, and it works from a financial services standpoint, like the actual financial instrument. And if that's all embedded, it's like, yeah, it seems weird. Like, why would Applied be like my payments processor? Like, aren't you guys like a software company? But when you realize like, well, yeah, we should, because it automates your life, like it automates all of these things. And it's not just Applied, like Applied's following the playbook that's very well established at this point, which is why the opportunity was so obvious to me. Probably less so to people who hadn't been in it, but like I've been building this a lot, and like had been looking at comps and looking at all this stuff, and like, all these companies were going public, and recently going public, like Toast, for example. Like everyone's used Toast. Anytime you've been to a restaurant, you use it. Like Toast is like one of the best comps on this.
Don't they give it away for free and they just get the processing? Isn't that how they did it? One of those guys did.
Yeah, that was the model for a while.
Okay,
but it didn't end up like that.
Oh, that didn't work out.
Okay. A lot of companies were doing that.
Yeah.
It's like, actually, we just make all of our money from the
But
financial
I feel like
service.
there's not enough money to be made in that, like, because it's
ceiling.
peanuts. It's tiny. Yeah, totally.
But like, and like Shopify is the other like big shining star here. Like 50% of Shopify's revenue is financial services now.
Wow.
And like, that would be so inconceivable 10 years ago of like a SaaS company having a balance. It's actually it has nothing to do with the balance sheet. So let's go back. No. But like, no, it's not the balance sheet. It's like, if it's to say like a software company that 50% of their revenue is financial services would be like inconceivable.
Right, totally.
Like, it would be like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
Like I don't.
Yeah.
But now it's just like par for the course. Like it makes tons of sense.
Yeah.
And look, the real benefactors here are the end users. Like the reason why these companies are so successful.
To be clear, it's kind of a commodity at its core, but in this case, it's not.
Yeah.
What we're talking about here is not.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, again, I'm talking about it from like the enterprise value side.
Right.
But like, I should be clear, like the beneficiaries, like the people who are benefiting from this and what's reflected in the valuation is the users. Like, it's just such a compelling story for the user to be like, yeah, let's get it all integrated. It's like, it automates everything for me. So.
Totally. So first payments, then now premium finance.
Yeah.
Get into that. And that's been wildly successful. And now what's next?
Yeah. So
like talk a little bit about that journey though. Like, and like, because you've been cranking on this for a bit.
Yeah. Again, I think that when you realize what we're building, it's like we're building accounting automation.
Yeah, right.
That's what we're building, right? Now, we're building accounting automation that's wrapped around a financial instrument because that's what's really hard. And like that's what requires specialty and like discipline and like industry understanding. But we're building accounting automation at the core. And when you think about a core accounting flows, it's like you got accounts receivable, you've got accounts payable, and then you have the processes, the accounting process around that. So when you think about the scope of like what a fintech should be doing, it's like, look, the instrument is, like you said, the instrument's commoditized. Sorry, the instrument, like financial instrument, like the actual payment, right?
Yep.
That's like that's the most commoditized thing ever. ACH
Yeah.
has been around for 50 years. It's
Yep.
like there's nothing to differentiate there. How you differentiate and the value you bring is the process around that. And so the big thing that's going to be exciting in the next 12, 24 months is like using AI, because LLMs have also evolved. It's like I was talking about cloud computing and security, how that was kind of ushered in like fintech. Like obviously the next leg of like groundbreaking tech is AI.
Mm-hmm.
And what's AI's gotten super accurate at like understanding an invoice
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So like now we can understand an invoice, a computer can, just like a human, which allows reconciliation to be super accurate, super fast,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that's what gets me excited. Is like you got fintech merged with SaaS. Like that's cool. Like that was a great intersection. And then you've got like AI merging with that conjunction as well. And it's like you get just incredible usage out of all of this stuff.
What's interesting though is like there's all these point solutions that are out there that are surrounding this, especially around the agency management systems. And I'd even argue on policy administration systems as well. Like we're not going to get into that.
Yeah.
That's a whatever. But the AMSs have a lot of these point solutions surrounding this. And I think it was interesting, in your keynote today, we were talking about that, about how you can kind of bring all those together with inside the platform, and just the value that brings is just so tremendous. And it's when you start to really connect all those things together. I mean, to say a lot of those point solutions aren't needed, which is great from a cost perspective, complexity perspective, but like what you bring into the platform and the value that you bring to those end users is massive. And the things that, you're talking about doing and like the vision for the future are things that people haven't really thought about doing. And that's because they haven't done what you've done in the heavy lifting of all of this kind of building blocks to get there. Right?
Yeah. The way that I think about it, and the first question I had when I assessed this opportunity was, the question I asked, Graham and the others was, are we the system of record?
Right. Yeah.
Because if you're not, all this kind of dream around automation and like embeddedness is like, there's a very clear ceiling to that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, unless you're the system of record, like there's an end to the automation, because the next leg on every process in the business ends with the system of record. In our industry, that's the AMS or BMS, right?
Yep.
Agency management system. So it's like I was really eager to have the opportunity to be in the system of record, because I had spent my time building the bolt-on.
Yeah, right. Yep.
Right, around the system of record. And I would hit that wall.
Yeah.
Whereas like, unless we become like the accounting platform, like we're not going to automate anything further. Like we've automated as much as we can, because the next leg of this process is the system of record. And for the most part, in most businesses, there is a specific software that's the system of record. Oftentimes that's verticalized software. In our space, that's agency management system. But it's like, unless you're the system of record, there's an end to how much you can solve. Like you can solve everything, but it's like there's a ceiling.
Yeah.
Whereas if we're the system of record, and that's why I'm super focused on like, hey, let's start with the system of record first and then automate out.
Yeah, totally. Yep.
Instead of starting here and trying to automate in.
Right.
Which is the much easier path.
Right. Right.
Like that took some, convincing around, hey, we're going to take the hard path, but it's going to be the worthwhile path, because we could go build a bolt-on and try to integrate in.
Yeah.
But like you hit walls.
Yeah, totally.
But if you start with the nucleus, like you can automate out. And like that's very abstract and conceptual, but like that's really where we're focused, is like, hey, like let's solve like at the atomic level.
Yep.
And then like the organism will function properly, rather than like starting on the periphery and like trying to solve it from the outside. So that to me was like the vision in a very abstract way of like what I have for kind of the financial services business, which we're now calling like financial management.
Yeah.
Because it really is like, hey, let's talk about like the core root process and then solve it out, rather than like taking, you get a signal out, I guess most people are listening, but you get a signal like way out here, and then you solve that signal, but then you like scratch the surface, and it's like it all ends up back in like the core system.
Yep.
So it's like, hey, do that analysis before building, and then build with like, from the inside out rather than from the outside in.
It's freaking awesome, man. It's really awesome.
Thanks, dude.
I mean, it's been a lot of work. I mean, the whole financial management, that's what you're calling it, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting because it's like a category that doesn't really exist in that way, because it's like accounting or like commissions or like, like premium finance or, payment processing. But it's this whole financial management piece within, the life cycle for the broker.
Yeah.
In this example. That's cool, man.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So having fun, crushing it. You're absolutely crushing it.
Thanks, dude.
Applied's done really well with it. Like I said, I didn't expect that. And I didn't really see how this could all come together like it is, and the value that it could really bring back then. And so I think that was pretty freaking cool.
So when I was interviewing, you were like, no way, dude.
No, it wasn't no way. It wasn't no way. But like they were
kidding.
just like, I mean, Graham was throwing like huge nut, and I'm like, no, I don't know about that, man. And to be fair, they did dial it back a little bit. Yeah. They did dial it back, right? I'm not wrong. All right, couple more questions.
Yeah. Dude, I haven't spoken enough, so if you could just get the question quick, so I can have the rest of the time, that would be amazing.
So through your journey, throughout all of this, you've definitely become a leader. Well, I'd say a leader. Do you consider yourself a leader?
I don't know. This probably sounds dumb, but like I feel like I'm an aspiring leader. Like when I think about leadership, I think about it as its own discipline, like independent of anything else. And it's like I'm early on that journey, like just by years of experience. So I feel like I'm an aspiring leader.
What does a good leader mean?
What does it mean? I'll rephrase it. What does it mean to be a good leader? That feels a bit easier for me to answer.
That's what I meant to say.
Okay, yeah. What does it mean to be a good leader? I think what it means to be a good leader, I have a bit of a tough take on this. It's like it's results, actually. Like there's lots of ways to lead, and there's lots of flavors of that. But like leadership at the end of the day should be measured by results.
Totally.
Like you can be a people person.
Yep.
People can love you. People want to follow you. But like
so true. That
has an expiration date if you're not getting results.
Yeah.
So
that's
like
across everything.
Yeah, like independent of anything.
Yeah, right.
If you're a professor.
Yep.
If you're a salesperson, like whatever. But like to me, like the barometer should be results, which is a tough pill to swallow. And like people don't love that because people want to put leadership in like these abstract, like human things, which it is, but that's the flavor. Like what it means to be a good leader is delivering results. Hands down to me. Like that is the only answer in my brain to that question. Now, how you go about getting results,
right,
is there's tons of different ways. I mean, when I look at the leadership teams that I've been a part of, the leadership teams here, it's like, how you lead is like totally different than how Graham leads.
Oh yeah. Totally.
But you both get results.
Yeah.
So it's like you're both great leaders.
Yep.
But the flavor is very different.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And I think for me, you've got to figure out, like one has to figure out like what their flavor is that's going to be authentic to them.
Yep.
And deliver results. So like you can't just fake some, like I can't wake up one day and be like, I want to lead like Reid. Like it's just not going to work for me. Like,
yeah, right.
And I'm not going to do that for Bridget, our chief people officer. Like everyone's got to find their own like flavor that's authentic. Cause like if you're faking it, it's just it's going to be awkward for everybody. So when I think about leadership, I think like what it means is like results. So like that's priority one. Now, how you get the results to me is like choose your own adventure.
Yeah.
Like you got to find your voice.
Yeah.
For me, the stuff that's important is like relationships, which I worry that I actually over anchor on relationships. Like the teams that I've built have worked for me like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah. But that is a thing. Like when leaders come into an organization, they don't have people that come with them from other. That's to me, it's a red flag.
Yeah.
If you've been leading them for a while, you've done cool stuff, and you've done. I mean, I don't know. I think you have. I mean, you build a team, man. You build an army. You build followers in that way. I mean, they're your people.
I agree, but I do think that there's, and maybe I'm just getting in my own head about this, but I worry like I over-index there, where it's like there's probably really good people that I'm not taking seriously because I would just rather have someone that I know.
Oh,
so like
fair enough. Okay.
I think that there's like a balance there that I'm trying to find.
True.
But like for me, it's like relationships. Like I think that if you can build a genuine connection with someone,
Yeah.
then like, and there's chemistry. Like people underinvest in chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I interview someone, if their resume checks out and I think it's authentic, like they're not lying,
Right.
which at like this stage, like other people's doing that before it gets to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like
exactly,
that
yeah.
vetting happens by like recruitment and all that. So like
Yep.
when someone gets to me, like I'm looking for chemistry, because if I don't have chemistry with that person, like problem solving is going to be hard.
Yeah.
Like when you think about like a job in the most abstract way, it's like you're problem solving and you're communicating. It's
Right.
like, that's what I do. Like that's my job, you know, like, and that's super abstract. And like, I mean, you've been a CEO for a long time, but like for me, it's like kind of an abstract job. It's like, what the hell do I even do? Like, what is my job? You know? And it's like, okay, well, my job's problem solving and communicating. Okay, so how do I enable me to be the best at that? It's like, I gotta find someone who obviously has the right background for like the specific job they need. But again, that's just like table stakes. You know?
Right.
Like the thing that's super important to me is like chemistry. If I don't have chemistry with someone, they could be amazing at that job.
Yeah.
And they could probably go crush it with someone else. But like, if I don't have chemistry, like,
yeah.
if I'm not excited to get up and talk to someone,
Yeah.
like that's a tough gig.
It's a good call, dude. I never really thought of it in that way. It's so true. Like I'm like, oh, like in my mind, I'm like, they're a good culture fit. But I think that's what I'm saying. I actually mean it is. It's like chemistry with them as people. Do I like to be with this person? Are they going to fit in with the rest of the people?
Yeah, like do I get
way?
energy from them, or like
Right.
do they drain energy? And when you make the wrong call on that one, it's like tough, quick.
Oh, dude, yeah.
It's like
not
if I
good.
if I get a Slack from someone that's like, I don't even know what it says yet, but I'm just like, oh,
yeah,
that's bad news.
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
for everybody.
Yeah.
It's like, so for me, it's like chemistry is super important. Obviously, qualifications, like that's table stakes. Like, super table stakes to me. I think people over anchor on qualification at a certain level. There's a
But
bare.
it goes back to what you were saying though earlier about like, you know, with your relationships and whatnot. There's a happy medium there.
Yeah,
right.
For sure. Like there's a minimum. Like you got to have, like let's say like 80th percentile on qualifications. So like way above average, right? Like you're not qualified unless you're way above average. So it's like, okay, you're 80th percentile on qualifications. So you're already excellent, better than 80% of people out there. But like the difference between like 80th percentile and like 99th percentile is chemistry of the team.
Right.
Like excellence comes
totally
from chemistry of the team, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like not skill set and experience. There's a minimum excellence there.
Totally
needed.
agree.
But like where you get like 10x results to me is like chemistry of the team. And I spend a huge amount of my time worrying about team chemistry and team dynamics.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome, man. I got 2 more questions and then we're gonna wrap it up.
Cool.
All right. Aside from time with your family, what do you do for fun?
I want to stop working as soon as possible so I can just have fun all the time. I'm dead serious. Like, I do not live to work.
By the way, this dude has fun, for real.
Like, I want, like, working is a means to an end, for sure for me. So, like, what do I do for fun? I'm super social. Like, I like going out with friends.
Yep.
I like going out, meeting weird people at the bar, you know, like, chatting it up with people. I like traveling. Like obviously a big part of my life is like new cultures, new people, getting out of my comfort zone. Like my dream vacation is like I end up in a foreign country I've never been in and everything goes wrong and I've just got to figure out how to like make it work for a week. That's like awesome. My dream vacation. And I swear to you, I'm not kidding. Like if you asked my wife, she would be like, yeah, that checks out 100%. Like I end up in Sri Lanka with like on accident, you know, and it's like I have to be there for a week. Like that's amazing to me. Like I love like exploring new places and like being super out of my comfort zone. And like like we started with, like I'm an outdoors guy. Like I ski now. Skiing's a big part of my life. I mountain bike.
Yep.
Spend as much time in the mountains as possible. Like grew up in the mountains, left for about 10 years, and this would be the case for probably like you're from Southern California. It's like. The ocean probably calls you, you know what I mean? Oh, yeah. It's like, there's just something about like the environment you grew up in. There's just this magnetism of it that I'm in the current moment of my life. Like that's super fulfilling to me of just being like, you know what? Like this is my place. is my home. Like I'm taking full advantage of that. So like spending, the time in the mountains and like exploring is super cool to me.
It's awesome. All right, last question. What is your drink of choice? I actually don't know this.
Dude, because I don't have one. If you recall, I grew up Mormon.
I know. I know this. I know this. This is like a little bit of a tricky question.
Yeah,
It's kind of a trick question.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be coffee or soda.
Yeah,
It doesn't have to be
let's
booze,
think.
but I mean, I
Okay.
think you do have a
This
cocktail
is
here and there.
Okay, I'll give the real answer and then I'll give like a different answer. The real answer is water. Actually, I drink
Water?
a ton of water.
Water.
Like I drink
You can't say water. Water.
No, I know.
No, you
I'm
cannot
just-
say water.
I'm just telling you, there's a whole online community out there for water drinkers called Hydro Homies.
Hydro homies.
Yes. So water, I'm a big water guy. That's the dumbest
So wait, do you go to
answer.
like hydro homie parties? You guys
So-
like hang out, like
subreddit-
drink water?
r/Hydro Homies. Okay, that's a dumb answer. My current drink of choice is a gin and tonic. Actually,
Oh,
that's what
All right.
I'm riding the G&T
Yeah.
train. But like, this will be funny, the audience. But it's like, I didn't acquire the taste young, so it's
Yeah.
like gross, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And like, but it's fun, so it's
Yeah.
like you want to, but it's
Right.
like gross, so it's like, what's like the most palatable without everyone laughing you out of the room? Let me tell you just a very quick story, okay? And this maybe makes it, maybe it shouldn't, but it's too long of a story. I'll have to tell you tonight. It's a funny story about how I was in Amsterdam and I was like, I'd never had a drink. I had like tried it. It was like me and my wife.
Tell the story,
Okay.
dude. Tell the story.
Okay, so
Do the short version.
the short version is, I had like had my first drink once, like prior to that, like
No kidding,
It was
yeah.
like I was like 30 something. Me and my wife were like, hey, we're gonna have our first drink, so like we just had our first drink together. Like it was a special moment.
Wow.
But then I was like in Amsterdam for work by myself, and I was like, I want to go out. Like this is like one of the biggest nightlife cities in
Oh,
the
yeah,
world.
yeah.
Like I love dancing. I love a dance floor. Like I
You
was
two
like,
cut a rug, dude.
Yeah,
This guy
dude,
can
no.
freaking dance for real.
no, like I love dancing, and like Amsterdam's like world famous for nightclubs.
Yeah.
And so I go online and like there's like an Airbnb experiences thing of like go out with a local type thing, which I learned is effectively just a bunch of dudes on business who are paying for friends for the night. Like it's not weird or anything,
Yeah.
but it's just like a bunch of guys. It's like if you're in a city by yourself and you want to go out, it's like a great thing. Actually,
Yeah,
it's like
totally, yeah.
meet up at the bar with a bunch of people and there's like a local who's
Yeah.
like bar hopping with you. Like it's
Yeah.
actually awesome.
That is pretty cool.
But I show up and I had never really had a drink, and there was like a lady drinking like a tiki type drink, you know, with like an umbrella and like a straw and like a fruit thing on it, And I was like, I'll have one of those. It looked good. And so
Long Island Ice or something.
no,
Painkiller.
it's weirder. No, it's even weirder. No, it's just like a fluffy tiki drink, right?
Gotcha. Yep.
And then another guy shows up who looks like you, just like a cool guy who's been drinking since he was 10, probably smokes cigars, like someone who knows what they're doing, okay? And he's like, you with this party? Or like, you with this like thing? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, oh, hey, what's up? Like shake hands. He's like, the bartender's like, what do you want? He's like, I'll have what he's having. Doesn't ask. And I'm like,
You're mortified.
I am like, this is going to be weird for sure, And the bartender's like, you sure? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, what'd you order? So after the order's been taken, he's like, what'd you order? And I was like, I actually didn't even know. I was just like, oh, just some drink, Like I was just like, I don't know. And I just looked, okay. And so then the bartender comes back with these over the top, like cups shaped like this, cherry on top, like just this ridiculous drink. And the guy's like, oh no. And like he thought it was a mistake. And the bartender's like, no, this is what you guys ordered. And I was like, thanks. And the guy just looks at it, looks at me, and just walks off. Doesn't talk to me the rest of the night. So I've learned my lesson. I'm like, all right, I've got to figure out like what's normal. But I can act, because like I'm not going to drink like whiskey neat. Like that's never going to happen.
Right, totally.
Yeah. So anyway,
That's hilarious.
I've had lots of those moments, honestly, where it's just like, oh, It's tough. It's tough being like an alien in this environment.
Well, dude, this was a ton of fun. Folks, if you see Chase out there, buy him the fruitiest, lamest,
Yeah, dude.
pinkest, fluffiest,
Please,
umbrellas, all
please.
the thing drink. And, and he'll be proud. Proud. Yes. Thanks
Yes,
a lot.
thank
Dude.
you.
This
Yeah,
was
no,
fun. That
thanks
was
for having me
funny,
on.
dude.
This is great.
That was
Yeah.
funny. That was a great story. It was a good story. It was worth it.